Berserk does not speak that grammar. Berserk has read it, understood it, dissected it, and then built something that uses the same vocabulary to say the opposite thing. In the world that Kentaro Miura constructed over 3 decades of extraordinary artistic and philosophical labor, transformation is not growth. It is not evolution. It is not the hero becoming more fully themselves. It is the complete, irrevocable, annihilating loss of the self that existed before, replaced by something that wears the body like a costume and has no relationship with the person who once inhabited it. The world of Berserk is constructed on a foundation of suffering, not gratuitously, not for the simple shock of darkness, but with a rigor and intentionality that distinguishes Miura's work from almost everything else in the medium. The suffering in Berserk is earned, in the sense that it flows from the internal logic of the world Miura built, and it is purposeful, in the sense that it is always in the service of the series' central questions. What does it mean to be human in a world actively hostile to human? Flourishing? What is the relationship between ambition and destruction? And, most pressingly, most repeatedly, what are you willing to become in order to get what you want? Each apostle form in Berserk is a portrait, a physical externalization of the interior landscape of the person who chose to become it, their obsessions, their repressions, their unresolved griefs, and unacknowledged cruelties. The forms are grotesque, not as a stylistic choice, but as a logical necessity. The interior life they are expressing was always grotesque, always monstrous in potential. The transformation simply makes the inside legible from the outside. Number 10. The Count. The weight of denial. The Count is among the first apostles encountered in Berserk's narrative, and Miura uses him with the precision of an author who understands that introductions carry a disproportionate weight. The Count's transformation establishes the rules of apostlehood, not through exposition but through the full, unsparing depiction of what the process actually involves. Physically, emotionally, and morally. Everything that follows in the series' treatment of apostles is in some sense an elaboration of what the Count's story establishes here. The Count was once a man of genuine standing, not simply social authority, but the kind of moral authority that comes from believing, sincerely, in something larger than yourself. His devotion to eradicating heresy was not performed. It was real. And it was this genuine devotion that made the discovery of his wife's participation in heretical rituals so catastrophically destabilizing. The foundation of his identity, his role as the righteous man, the defender of divine order, required that he respond in a specific way. He did. The sacrifice he made to activate his Behelit was the direct consequence of an identity so rigid that it could not accommodate contradiction. His apostle form is massive, slug-like, a body that expands beyond any human scale and then keeps expanding. Flesh that appears to have been given too much material and no coherent instruction about what to do with it. The form is revolting in the precise sense that it provokes revulsion, and the source of that revulsion is not simply the physical grotesquerie, but the emotional context it exists within. This enormous, formless monstrosity was once a man of conviction. The form does not represent the abandonment of that conviction. Number 9. Rosine. Innocence corrupted. Rosine's transformation is the one that most clearly demonstrates Miura's willingness to place the full horror of Berserk in territory that conventional storytelling tends to protect. She is a child. She was a child who suffered, genuinely, severely, in ways that no child should suffer, and who coped with that suffering the way children do, through fantasy, through the construction of an imaginative world into which the real one could not follow. The fairies and the magical forests and the freedom of flight that she dreamed about were not escapism in the pejorative sense. They were the psychological survival mechanism of a young person in an impossible situation. When Rosine transforms, she gets what she always wanted. The wings are real. The ability to fly is real. The fantasy world she creates, populated with her elves, her subjects, her controllable version of the enchanted forest she imagined, is physically real in Berserk's world, because the God Hand's power operates at the level of reality itself. She asked for the dream, and she received it. This is the precise form of cruelty that Berserk reserves for its most tragic characters. Not the denial of the thing desired, but the fulfillment of it, in a form that reveals what was always wrong with the desire itself. The elves that populate Rosine's world are the detail that transforms the tragedy into horror. They are not fairies, they are humans, children specifically, who have been physically restructured into the forms she required to populate her fantasy. The process that creates them is depicted without mitigation. They are in pain. They retain enough of what they were to understand what has been done to them. And Rosine does not register this because the capacity for that kind of moral registration, the ability to hold the suffering of others as real and significant, is not something her childhood allowed her to develop. She is not cruel in the deliberate sense. She is something worse, a person who causes suffering without the moral infrastructure to recognize it as suffering. Number 8. Wild. The truth of pure brutality. Wild occupies a specific and necessary position in Berserk's roster of apostles. Not every transformation in the series is complex. Not every apostle carries a rich interior life, a comprehensible backstory, a tragedy that illuminates the human costs of the sacrifice. Some people who activate their behelits are not interesting as psychological subjects. They are simply people whose most fundamental quality was always cruelty, and whose transformation expresses that quality without modification or complication. Wild is this? And Wild's presence in the series is as important as any of the more complex apostles. His apostle form is enormous, physically dominant, and defined entirely by its offensive capacity. There is nothing in the design that suggests any inner life beyond violence. No residual trace of whatever human identity preceded the transformation. No suggestion that anything was lost that anyone would have valued. The form is a pure expression of a pure impulse, and the disturbing quality of it is precisely this purity. Most horror in Berserk comes from complexity, from the tension between what was human and what has been replaced. Wild offers no such tension. He is what he always was, finally given adequate physical expression. Number 7. Mozgus, the face of divine cruelty. Mozgus is the most theologically specific transformation in Berserk, and Miura deploys him with the care of someone who has thought seriously about what organized religious devotion, taken to its logical extreme under the wrong conditions, actually produces. Mozgus is not a hypocrite. This is the crucial distinction, the one that separates him from the more comfortable category of villains who profess faith while secretly serving other ends. His faith is entirely genuine. His devotion to what he understands as divine will is complete and sincere. He tortures because he believes torture serves righteousness. He kills because he believes killing is sometimes what righteousness requires. He does not enjoy these things in the way that a sadist does. He performs them as a vocation. When Mozgus transforms, the visual language of the sequence is a masterwork of theological irony. His body becomes something that reads, on first impression, as holy. The stone-like rigidity, the vast wings, the sense of a being elevated beyond ordinary human form into something categorically higher. The aesthetic of his transformation borrows from the visual vocabulary of divine manifestation. And then you look more closely at what the transformation actually represents. The complete elimination of doubt, the final sealing of a mind that was already closed, the physical expression of a moral certainty so absolute that it has ceased to be morality in any meaningful sense and becomes simply the justification for whatever he wants to do. Number 6. Zod, the comfort of becoming Nosferatu. Zod has been an apostle for centuries, and this duration is the most important fact about him. Not the power it implies, though the power is real and formidable. The duration, because it means that Zod has had more time than any other apostle in the series to fully inhabit what he has become, to develop, if that word can be used in this context, a settled relationship with the monster he is. Most apostles in Berserk are defined by the rupture of their transformation. The before and the after, the human and the thing that replaced it. Zod has had so long that the rupture is no longer the defining feature. The after is simply who he is. His beast form, a massive winged creature of overwhelming physical capability, does not represent the violation of a previous self. It represents the full expression of a self that was always, at its core, oriented toward combat, toward the testing of strength against strength, toward the single-minded pursuit of the only thing that Zod has ever genuinely valued. Number 5. The Egg of the Perfect World. Transformation as erasure. The Egg of the Perfect World is among the most unusual figures in Berserk. Unusual even by the standards of a series that has established an extraordinary range of unusual figures. He is not a warrior. He is not a political actor. He does not have a personal vendetta or a territorial ambition or any of the conventional motivations that drive most of the series' antagonists. He is defined, from the first moment we encounter him, by a single quality: the total absence of any desire that is specifically his own. He exists, as far as he is concerned, for a purpose, and the purpose is not about him. His transformation is the most self-abnegating in the series. Other apostles gain power through their transformation. They receive something, even at the cost of their humanity. The Egg of the Perfect World transforms in order to become a vessel, a container for something larger than himself. Specifically, for the rebirth of Griffith in the physical world. His body is the medium through which a God-level being re-enters material existence. He is used up in this process completely. Not killed. Exactly something more thorough than killed. Consumed. Incorporated. Converted into the raw material of someone else's manifestation. The disturbing quality of this transformation is the one that the egg himself does not appear to experience as disturbing. The completeness of his self-erasure. He wanted to be part of something transcendent. He wanted his existence, which had been marginal, discarded, without social recognition or value, to matter in some way that could not be taken from him. He achieved this. His transformation was the fulfillment of his deepest desire. He is the element of the new world that could not exist without him. He simply no longer exists himself to appreciate this. The desire was fulfilled after the person who held it was gone. In Berserk's universe, this is an entirely ordinary transaction. Number 4. The Eclipse. Transformation at scale. The Eclipse is not a transformation in the individual sense that the other entries on this list are. It is a transformation of a different order of magnitude, a ritual event in which the God Hand manifests fully in the physical world, consuming an enormous quantity of human life in the process, using that consumption as the fuel for the manifestation of something categorically beyond human scale. It is the moment in Berserk where the personal horror of individual apostle transformations expands into something that implicates everyone, everywhere, all at once. The Band of the Hawk, the mercenary company that has been the narrative's human center for the entire Golden Age arc, arrives at the Eclipse as a unit. They have been through everything together. They have fought, survived, formed bonds of genuine loyalty and genuine love under conditions that would have destroyed lesser groups. They arrive at the Eclipse as, in the most meaningful sense, a community. They leave it, those who leave it at all, as devastated remnants of what that community was, having witnessed its systematic destruction in one of the most sustained depictions of horror in manga history. Number 3. Griffith. The birth of Femto. Griffith's transformation into Femto is the central event of Berserk, the pivot point around which the entire narrative rotates, the moment that everything before it was building toward and everything after it is responding to. It is also, in the formal taxonomy of disturbing transformations, the most complete example of what Miura means when he uses transformation as a philosophical statement. Every other transformation in the series, however disturbing, is in some sense a contained event. A specific person making a specific choice, producing a specific consequence. Griffith's transformation is all of this, and also something larger. It is a statement about what human ambition, pursued without limit and without moral constraint, finally arrives at. The Griffith who activates his Crimson Behelit has been broken in ways that are almost incomprehensible to absorb. A year of torture has left him physically destroyed, unable to speak, unable to use his hands, unable to walk. The man who was once the most compelling presence in any room, the charismatic dreamer who inspired absolute loyalty through sheer force of personality, has been reduced to something that cannot function independently. And in this state, in a moment of absolute despair, he makes a choice. Not a choice made in strength, or in calculation, or in the cold. Assessment of strategic advantage. A choice made in the ruins of everything he was, by whatever remained when everything else had been taken. Number 2. Guts. The Berserker armor. Guts' relationship with the Berserker armor is the most sustained transformation narrative in Berserk, and it operates differently from every other transformation on this list in one crucial respect. It is not chosen, not in the sense that the apostles choose. Guts does not activate his Behelit in a moment of desperation or ambition or grief. He puts on armor that was given to him in circumstances of genuine crisis and discovers what it costs only through the experience of wearing it. This is the transformation. That happens not to someone who sought power, but to someone who simply could not afford to be without it. The Berserker armor's mechanism is immediately comprehensible and immediately horrifying. It suppresses pain, suppresses the body's natural protective reflexes, and allows the wearer to continue functioning at full combat capacity through injuries that would normally incapacitate or kill. This is exactly what Guts needs in the situation he is in, and Miura is too honest a storyteller to let that fact be. Simple. The armor works. It keeps Guts alive and fighting in situations where, without it, he would die. And each time it activates, each time Guts allows the armor to take over and override his conscious control. Something in his interiority, the interior that has been the moral and emotional center of the place. Narrative for hundreds of chapters becomes slightly less accessible to him. The transformation the Berserker armor enacts is not physical in the primary sense. Guts' body changes the armor, reshapes bone and tissue to maintain function, leaving scars and damage that accumulate. But the more significant change is cognitive and emotional. The armor, when fully activated, does not just suppress pain, it suppresses the self. It replaces the complex, emotionally engaged, morally committed person who chose to put it on with something simpler, a combat function, sustained by rage, oriented entirely toward the destruction of whatever is in front of it. The entity that fights in full Berserker mode is not Guts. It is what remains of Guts when everything that makes him Guts has been temporarily consumed. Number 1. The idea of evil. The origin of all darkness. The idea of evil is the most disturbing entry on this list because it is the only one where the transformation is not of a person, it is of an idea. And ideas, unlike people, do not have limits. They do not exhaust. They do not die when the body that holds them dies. They persist, propagate, and in the universe of Berserk, they can apparently coalesce into something that operates as an independent entity, something that exists not in any physical location, but in the collective interior life of humanity, sustained by the accumulated weight of human suffering and human desire. The idea of evil is what human beings created, without intending to, by needing things that the universe was not built to provide. The need for meaning in suffering. The need for an explanation for why terrible things happen to people who do not deserve them. The need for some intelligence behind the apparent randomness of a world that distributes pain without apparent pattern or purpose. These needs are not weaknesses or corruptions. They are the most fundamental expressions of what human consciousness is: the drive to find pattern, to construct meaning, to insist that the universe is comprehensible, even when it demonstrably is not. The idea of evil is what happens when this drive, this absolutely human, absolutely understandable drive, produces something real.